In this video, we are going to be looking at a First Amendment case involving the freedom of speech, and that is Schenck v. United States, 1919. Here is the story and background of this case. This takes place during the First World War. By 1916, World War I had been going on in Europe for 2 years, and there was a lot of debate among Americans because they didn't want to be involved in the overseas war. Woodrow Wilson was re-elected this year as president while running with the slogan, "He kept us out of war." The U.S. formally declared war and entered into World War I on April 2, 1917. After that, Congress passed the Selective Service Act of 1917, which was the first military draft since the Civil War. That same year, the Espionage Act was passed by Congress, which gave the national government the authority to censor some speech by refusing to deliver mail that violated the act. The Espionage Act was directed toward people trying to resist the draft and disrupt war mobilization. People spied and reported neighbors for violating the act. In total, more than 2,000 people were prosecuted and 900 sent to jail for violating the Espionage Act. Charles Schenck, secretary of the Philadelphia Socialist Party, sent leaflets to drafted men. Printed on the flyer was, "Long live the Constitution of the United States." He argued that the draft was a form of involuntary servitude, which thereby outlawed the 13th Amendment. The flyers also urged the drafted men to write to their congressmen and tell them they wanted the draft repealed. Schenck believed he was encouraging people to legally express their opinion to their federal government. The First Amendment protects the right to free speech. However, the right is not absolute. For example, you can't yell "fire" in a movie theater. The government can place reasonable limits on protected rights. The U.S. government did not agree with Schenck, and he was arrested after printing and mailing 15,000 flyers, which they claimed violated the Espionage Act. The government argued Schenck's actions to disrupt the military draft actually endangered the country. Schenck asked the U.S. Supreme Court to hear his case, and the court agreed.
In this case, the constitutional issue that is involved is the First Amendment, which is the right to the freedom of speech. The main issue of this case is if Schenck's First Amendment was violated when he was convicted under the Espionage Act for criticizing the draft. Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote the conclusion, saying that the courts owe greater respect to the government during this time of war, even when constitutional rights were in danger. He used, for the very first time, the clear and present danger test. He also used the free speech clause of the First Amendment, which does not shield the conduct deemed unlawful under the Espionage Act. The dissents in this court case were deemed anonymous, but this court case was mostly led by Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes. He reversed his position by questioning the government's ability to limit free speech and if the Espionage Act went against the Constitution. He also didn't believe that the court was applying the clear and present danger test appropriately.
Versus Des Moines Independent Community School District, 1969. Students decided to wear a black armband to show their support of the truce in the Vietnam War. The school asked them to remove it, and if not, they would be sent home. The argument in question was, does a prohibition against the wearing of armbands in public school as a form of symbolic protest violate the students' freedom of speech protections guaranteed by the First Amendment? The second related case is Brandenburg v. Ohio. Brandenburg, a KKK leader, made a speech at a rally that advocated for violence. Since there was a clear and present danger, he was convicted. The Supreme Court decided in favor of Brandenburg, saying that his First Amendment right to free speech was violated. Both of these courts relate to Schenck v. U.S. because they have issues regarding the First Amendment violation of free speech.